Now, the issue of pricing came up again in that session where you were, and one of the participants was of the view that proper pricing is very important if we must attract the right investment into the power sector. Now, and we know that is one issue consumers are very skeptical about. So what does the Lagos State government intend to do in terms of ensuring that, yeah, while you have a good pricing that would be an encouragement for investors to come into this sector, it will also be something that would be affordable for consumers?
First and foremost, let me provide some clarification. Power is regulated at the federal level. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is actually an agency of the federal government. So they are responsible for industry-wide regulation and tariff determination for the consumers. They have the multi-year tariff order framework, which has already been put in place, which was done in consultation with all stakeholders, including consumers, as well as service providers. So in terms of the role of Lagos State, we can only join the advocacy because we don't have a direct responsibility for regulation of the power sector. But we play a complementary role because we can host, for example, to Eko and Ikeja Disco, which are the two largest discos in terms of the aggregation of the 11 discos when you talk about revenue. Then we have a key role to play to support them in what they do to ensure that that sector becomes viable, not just for investors, but for consumers as well, for lenders as well, and for sponsors as well. So we will continue to play the required supportive role in that regard.
Well, there is no doubt that public and private partnership is key to achieving steady power supply and, of course, doing business. Now, you manage the PPP portfolio for Lagos State. How has this program fared so far?
I must say to you that we are quite pleased with what we have achieved in terms of some of the flagship projects that have been developed. I mentioned our intervention in power sector. Those are all PPP projects. The Etios-Aleki-Ekpe Express Road is one of the flagship projects that we have embarked upon in terms of a full market-based, user-based toll road in not just even in Nigeria, in West Africa itself. And if you put that on the backdrop of the fact that sometime in the mid-2000s, former President Obasanjo actually cancelled tolling across highways in Nigeria. And for us to lead that public advocacy, for citizens to come to accept to pay for services they consume, they are seeing tremendous value. Today on that road, if you have a breakdown, you see a ready security patrol or an assistance vehicle that pulls up near you to fix your vehicle. You have a 24/7 security patrol and so many other complementary services that are offered to road users at no extra cost other than the toll that they pay. The Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge has also an electronic tolling system concession, which is close to 1 year in operation now. We've developed so many other projects in real estate in terms of maybe leisure, mall, and retail real estate activities like Tejo Show, like what we have at Uluwole in Lagos, like the project at Adenino Ogunsoya to develop shopping malls, and so many others that we have done. The BT Diagnostic Center in the health sector in Ikeja is also one of such projects. So, and we are still building on that capability. The Lekki Deep Sea Port, which is the first of its kind of a deep sea port in our region, is also by PPP. Lagos State owns close to 20%, federal government 20%, close to by MPA, and then the sponsors, the Tolerant Group, also own about 60% of that transaction. And as we speak, we are trying to close out on financing now. We've started preliminary and early works on that side. So we're building on our capabilities in that regard.
So tell me, what went wrong with the Lekki concessioning project? It was celebrated as one of the few success stories in Lagos State.
What went wrong, as a matter of fact, is about affordability of the project for all stakeholders. At the time we signed our contract in April 2006, exchange rate was under 118 naira to the US dollar. Interest rates were not as high as we currently see in the market. Cost of buying steel was not as high as this, or cost of buying cement, as it were, for the construction of the road. Now, we also began to see at that time inflation that was rising steadily. It's only last year that we're beginning to see inflation that is reining in at sub 10. We're talking about 7.9% at the moment. And of course, the concessionaire, within its rights in the concession agreement, has the right to index toll every 90 days to inflation. If that had been done by June last year, for example, the 120 naira for car would have been increased to 144 naira, because it would have taken a 20% increase thereabouts. And being constructively engaged with the concessionaire and listening to the public and feedback we've received from the public and other key stakeholders, we felt that the time wasn't auspicious to have implemented such a marked increase in tariff. So government had to step in on behalf of the public, in overriding public interest, to ensure equilibrium for everybody in terms of being fair to all the parties, the concessionaire, the lenders, as well as the users. So, and one thing must also be made, must be emphasized. All over the world, government will always step in on behalf of the citizen for overriding public interest.
Now, don't you think that sometimes that could be discouraging for, investors?
I would say not necessarily. And like I mentioned, when we stepped in, stepped in within the purview of the contractual relationship between government and the concessionaire. So that is why we engage with all the key stakeholders, like I mentioned, the concessionaire, the lenders in the transaction, who are also investors by way of providing debt facility. So nobody is left hanging out there without being adequately covered in the whole arrangement. So they are well protected, everybody is well protected, and everybody is happy that what we are pursuing is a win-win strategy for the public, for the investors, be they concessionaire or sponsors or lenders, as well as government.
And you've reeled out some of the plans and projects the government, have tried to put in place. Now, how sustainable are these projects?
The projects are sustainable to the extent that what we do in Lagos in particular is we do a proper thinking through of projects that are implemented and of our policies as well. Every project conceptualized has an institutional and legal framework behind it. The PPP projects that are being undertaken in Lagos are being done under the ambit of the Lagos State Office of Public-Private Partnership Law 2011. Prior to that, there was the precursor law, which was the Roads, Highways and Bridges Private Sector Participation Authority Law in 2005, under the auspices of which the Etios-Aleki-Ekpe Express Road was consummated. That law got amended in 2007, and then it now got subsumed and consolidated. It was repealed by the Lagos State Office of PPP Law in 2011. So there is a legal and institutional framework for every transaction we've embarked upon. It's not a knee-jerk approach. They are well thought out, and in so doing, they can continue to outlast any government in power.